All right, good evening. Welcome back to Compound Interesting. My name is Emil, and in today's video, we're going to talk about digestive biscuits. No, I'm just messing. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin, and I'm going to go through a bullish scenario for 2021, which could potentially bring the price up to $700,000. So I'm going to go through exactly why I think this is the wildcard scenario, why this could possibly happen. And a lot of you might think I'm absolutely insane. Now, before we get going, I just want to say that this is not the most likely scenario, and it's definitely not a reason for you to go borrow money from all your family to buy Bitcoin or whatever. So don't go crazy. I'm just a guy on the internet, so don't listen to me. But these are just my thoughts and some things that I've learned over the last few years being in crypto. And one of the things that I've learned from being invested in Bitcoin is that Bitcoin rarely does what's expected. So maybe first we should start there. What exactly is expected for Bitcoin in 2021? What are the expected price targets in 2021? Well, we do know that Bitcoin goes through these 4-year cycles. So if you don't know, these 4-year cycles are correlated to the halving events. So I'm not going to get too technical into the halving events or whatever. I've explained halving events before. I'm sure you could research that in your own time because I don't want to waste anyone's time. But basically the Bitcoin supply gets cut in half every 4 years. And this supply side crisis has led in the past to enormous price increases, and we can see that in the last 2 cycles. So I'll show you. So these supply side crises over the last couple of cycles, there's only been 2 in Bitcoin's history so far, but they've led to massive price increases for Bitcoin, usually about 18 months after. So if we extrapolate like the normal way people estimate Bitcoin's future price is to say, okay, in the first Bitcoin cycle, from peak to peak, so from the maximum in the first cycle to the maximum in the second cycle was a 40x, and then from the second cycle to the third cycle peak was a 20x. So it went 40x, then it went 20x. So a lot of people say, oh, the next one's going to go 10x, which would put us from $20,000 to $200,000. People also do a similar price measurement from the bottoms, so the troughs of each cycle, to the next trough of the next cycle, etc. And that also gives us all these different, as well as the stock to flow model, which I'm not going to get into in this video, but all those different metrics kind of basing on past price action and stock to flow model, we usually get figures of anywhere between 80,000 and 300,000 per Bitcoin by the end of 2021, based on the general consensus in the Bitcoin space. No, but in all seriousness, I'd hugely appreciate if you could smash the thumbs up button nice and early. It really means the world to me and gets the small channel going. Subscribe if you haven't already. I mostly talk about investing in the stock market and in cryptocurrencies. I kind of like to blend those 2 philosophies and kind of drag people from the stock market into cryptocurrencies and vice versa. So if you're interested in that, also hit the notification bell, because I don't go after the YouTube algorithm. I don't try and play the YouTube algorithm. So I'm not like looking out to get loads of views or clickbaity too much like the YouTube algorithm wants me to. I'm just kind of talking about what I want to talk about and what I think will be most interesting and useful for you. So make sure to hit the notification bell, or otherwise it probably is not going to appear in your recommended feed. That would mean the world to me. So with all that said, let's get cracking. So why $700,000? $700,000 would be the price that Bitcoin would be if it reached the market cap of gold. So I have a few reasons that I believe Bitcoin's price could reach, possibly. This is a wildcard scenario, so a low likelihood in my opinion, but it could happen, and I don't think it's being appreciated right now in the crypto space whatsoever. But there's a couple of reasons why I think it could reach the gold market cap early. So everyone does think that Bitcoin is going to eventually reach gold market cap. And a lot of people, well, not everyone obviously, but everyone in the crypto space, otherwise they wouldn't be investing in it. So everyone in the crypto space believes or knows that Bitcoin will reach gold's market cap, and many believe it will reach potentially global reserve dominance. But let's not get there in today's video. Let's just stick to gold's market cap, because I think that Bitcoin has an extraordinarily high likelihood of reaching that market cap within my lifetime, so within a decade for certain, but potentially within the next year in this moonshot scenario. But basically what I'm saying is that everyone believes that it's going to go to this price, but no one knows when. So it's much easier to predict where something's going to go, but it's very hard to predict when it's going to happen. So some examples of this include electric cars. Electric cars were thought of literally when they started making cars. There were electric cars. So electric cars have been around for the longest time. People thought they were going to be the mode of transport rather than internal combustion engines. But at the time, the technology wasn't sufficient. The batteries weren't sufficient to make electric cars a viable option. So that's why ICE cars took over for so long. And now is when electric cars are actually coming to fruition. For example, another one is Google Glass. Everyone thought Google Glass was going to become the thing. Augmented reality. Everyone's going to go around wearing glasses and be able to text and everything. But that didn't happen. Another one, 3D printers. Everyone thought it's going to be such a huge industry. It's going to take over the world, etc., etc. But the technology was there. It's just the market wasn't ready yet. So Google Glass, 3D printing, they were all too early for their time, and they will probably come into the mainstream market adoption within a few years, 5, 10, 20 years, who knows exactly when. But those industries will probably eventually become into mass market mainstream adoption eventually, but no one knows when. Similarly with the airplane, no one thought it was going to be, humans were ever going to fly an airplane. People thought it was going to take decades and decades. In the 1900s, they were like, oh, we're never going to solve this problem. No one can do it. It's literally out of human possibility. Then out of nowhere, the Wright brothers invented the first plane. So what was supposed to take decades just took a couple of years. People thought it was going to take decades. Other people with tons and tons of money, much smarter people, loads of academic records, masters in engineering, couldn't do it, thought it was impossible, and then these guys did it out of nowhere. So I hope you're understanding what my point is. Everyone knows that Bitcoin, or everyone in the crypto space, I should say again, everyone knows in the crypto space that Bitcoin is going to reach gold's market cap because it's better in pretty much every way in comparisons to gold at gold's own purpose. The tricky thing is knowing when it's going to happen. And there is a number of reasons why it could happen a lot faster than people predict. So disruptive innovations, or things that take the world by storm and completely take over the world, or things that go from 0% adoption to 100% adoption, we can see they usually follow this S curve. So at the start, basically no one uses them for a long time, and then eventually they reach this critical mass, this inflection point, and literally so fast everyone is using it over the space of a couple of years that everyone wants to use it. And as you can see, since 1900s, like you can see, for example, telephone, it took 40 years before everyone was using telephones. But as you can see, as time progresses, these S curves are getting faster and faster and faster. And by the time we get to the tablet, we can see the tablet or smartphone, pretty much people are using them within it's mass market adoption within a few years. So this is the reason why Bitcoin could become mass market adoption by everyone in such a short time period that's unprecedented. Here on this chart, we can see where we are in the total market share for Bitcoin, and we're still in the innovators page, or innovators stage. 2.5% of the world's population owns Bitcoin. So we're still in the innovator stage. So we still have a long way to go before it's like, we literally have so much further to go. We're just starting to get the early adopters. We're still not in the early majority, nowhere near that, or the late majority, or the laggards. So we're still in 2.5% of everyone owning Bitcoin or having investments in Bitcoin. Okay, I just want to clarify with that graph that the price front runs the market share. So for example, Tesla or electric cars, even though only a small percentage of people use electric cars or drive Teslas or any other electric vehicles make up the vast market share, like by people investing in the stocks in comparisons to ICE vehicles, because people know that electric cars are going to be dominating in the future. So the price does front run the actual adoption. So basically what I'm saying is Bitcoin isn't at only 2.5% of its price. Like, it's probably at a little bit higher it's probably a little further along via price than it is by adoption, just so you're aware of that. I hope you understand what I'm saying. And here's just another chart from Willy Woo on Twitter. These are just the adoption curves of different payment methods throughout the world. So yeah, we can see mobile accounts, you can see how fast they went up. Internet users went up pretty slowly as well. PayPal accounts are kind of going in a linear growth. And then we can see how fast Bitcoin exchange users and Bitcoin on-chain users, the steepness of their growth shows that their user growth is much faster than the others in the that I mentioned at the start, so the mobile accounts and the internet users. All right, here's another really cool picture that I wanted to show you. You can see even how fast the adoption of vehicles was in the 1920s or whatever, 1910s. So you can see in 1900, you can only spot one automobile on Fifth Avenue in New York. Then by 1913, 13 years later, you can only spot one horse on Fifth Avenue in New York. So that just shows how those S-curve adoption rates go. So how everything just switches from basically no one using it to basically everyone using it. It can happen in a very, very short time span. And personally, well, I don't know, but I think we could possibly be on that precipice of, we probably are on that precipice of the S-curve, where it's about to go from very little adoption to mass adoption over the next couple of years, potentially. And that's one of the main reasons I think this wildcard scenario could play out. Because as we noted, still we're in the early adopter phase for Bitcoin, even though people have already made literally 10,000x on their money. That's because Bitcoin started from a few cents. Like, you couldn't have invested in Apple when Apple's market cap was $1 million. So you could never have gotten those gains with something like Amazon or Apple or whatever. But Bitcoin literally started out with a market cap of 0. So anyone who got in at the start made crazy returns. So there's still plenty of room to grow for Bitcoin, is what I'm saying in that point. So we'll have to see if this cycle turns out to be a total outlier in comparisons to the last two. But that's one reason why I think it potentially could be. The second reason is yeah, so the second reason is kind of a more obvious one, and it's because money printer go brrr. So my boy Jerome Powell and all his buddies in the Federal Reserve have been making it their absolute mission to print as many dollars as they humanly can. So this is why this cycle is likely to look a little bit different. It'll probably look a little bit different than previous cycles, because in previous cycles there was kind of a normal level of money printing and inflation. However, in this cycle there's literally 35%. In my last video I said there was 25%, but so there's 25% more M2 money stock and there's 35% more M1 money stock. So there's 35% and 25% more dollars just in this 1 year alone than there was in 2019. And over those years in the last Bitcoin cycles, money printing was probably like 6 or 7%. M1 and M2 increases were probably like 6 or 7%, maybe 5%. But now with like 30%, you've got to add that into Bitcoin's price appreciation. And not only that, people are going to be even more looking for a hedge against inflation, because they're really going to need somewhere to put their safe to put their value. They want somewhere where they can store their value, and potentially Bitcoin could be the perfect place, because you can bring it with you wherever you want to go. You can keep it in your head, etc., etc. You can send it halfway across the world without anyone being able to stop you. So the enormous inflation could also lead to an anomaly in the Bitcoin price appreciation in the next cycle. So that's a bit more of an obvious one. So this is inflation like we've never seen before. This is hyperinflation territory, and unless it stops or it really slows down in next year, which I'd say it will, we'll bring it back down to a controllable amount. But paying people for not working for an really expanded period of time is going to have a lasting impact on the economy. And the only way we can fix the economy these days, apparently, is to print more money. So all is good for Bitcoin. So let me know what you think. Do you think this S-curve adoption rate, this inflection point, could be coming up this year? Or are we going to have to wait another few years before Bitcoin becomes mainstream? Because I have no idea if it's going to happen next year. I'm just putting out that scenario where it could happen, where a lot of industries go through this S-curve adoption, where no one uses it, and then literally within the space of a few years, everyone uses it. Bitcoin, I think eventually that will happen, or where everyone wants to at least have a portion of their wealth stored in Bitcoin for safety and for a hedge against inflation, which at least we can guarantee that money printing is going to happen. So people are going to be looking for stores of value, and maybe some value that's stored in gold and value that's stored in real estate, because people are paying crazy amounts for real estate. They're just paying for real estate. Like Chinese people are buying real estate in Vancouver. When I was living in Vancouver, house prices were going for astronomical amounts, and these Chinese people weren't even living in the houses. They were just storing the wealth in the houses, because in China, if you try and store your wealth in a house, like, you don't really have ownership of the house like you do in Canada. In Canada, at least you know that you actually own the house. So housing prices were ballooning in Vancouver, and probably still are. But now there's other methods potentially to store your wealth safely, where you know no one can seize it from you. And that, of course, is Big Daddy Bitcoin. So if you enjoyed the video, I'd hugely appreciate it if you could smash the thumbs up button. It would really mean the world to me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell like I mentioned before. I really hope you learned something in this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and you got some value out of it. Anyway, I can't wait to see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Goodbye.